the first thing I want to say to you, ladies, is thank you, first of all, because the speed at which you acted and the way that you completely understood behavior, because you made it so easy to donate compared to any other platform. And I think that is why you were able to really tap into the hearts of people in this crisis and get them to actually act and actually donate and break through that kind of, actionable stress barrier where people don't really know what to do anymore.
So we can't just take the credit ourselves, but it's a heartfelt thank you to everyone who contributed.
I'm Sibylle. I'm originally an architect. I transitioned into marketing about 2 years ago, and I actually currently work in a construction technology startup here in London. And I have joined Impact Lebanon before it was actually Impact Lebanon. So I'm one of the co-founders of Impact Lebanon. So Impact Lebanon, we can go about this a bit. We can actually talk about it a bit later, but it was basically several initiatives that were very decentralized, and Raya and I worked on the same initiative. And then, when we incorporated Impact Lebanon, I was in charge of everything that was marketing related, so the branding, and I'm currently leading the marketing team during the fundraiser.
Amazing. You're doing a brilliant job.
Thank you.
I second that. And I'm Raya. I'm also based in London. I've been here for about 2 years. I work in tech, in partnerships and business strategy and development. And back in October, when the revolution started, I think we were all just so angry and so frustrated because we were so far away. So everyone came together to help as much as we could, and so I'm also a co-founder of Impact Lebanon.
So how many co-founders are there at Impact Lebanon?
19.
You managed to make the time to understand that true impact was going to be needed from the international community in. And very often, diaspora feel like that's not enough. But that was your first thought. It happened so quickly afterwards. We need to mobilize the international community and the world to be able to do a fundraiser. So how did that decision come about? Who made that decision?
And most of the board members and the founders of Impact were not in Lebanon. So I think we wanted to create this ripple effect. Like, how can we just do what we can that will, just create this massive impact? Like, obviously, we can't all be on the ground. Obviously, like I have tremendous respect for organizations like Embrace Lebanon for mental health or Muwatin Lebanese. Like, they're doing so much, but I think like it goes back to our point of not duplicating efforts. Like, we needed to figure out where was our strength and how we could play it.
Like, we had many fundraisers in the past and we knew how it worked. It was, something we had experience in. And so our first reaction was, okay, we can actually set up this fundraiser. But obviously our target was much lower than what we currently have. And then immediately, when we set up this fundraiser, we set it up the way we usually do it. We decided, to give, our first thought was, we have to help the Red Cross, the Lebanese Red Cross. And so that was, but we knew that we didn't want only to help the Red Cross. So we started by saying the Red Cross and some other NGOs, but we hadn't vetted anyone yet. We wanted to make sure, that we had sufficient time to actually understand which NGO we would give the money to. So at first we started as, we're actually doing this fundraiser for the Red Cross and other organizations on the ground. And this is when it picked up. And and after that, as you said, it was like huge ripple effect at the end of the day. And we just saw it grow like in front of us, in front of our eyes. And
I remember going to Beirut in November when Thawra started, and I was very like, I have to go in the streets, and I got on the plane and I went there by myself. I didn't know anybody, and I was just like, yeah, it's gonna happen. And within a couple days, I was already going to 6 or 7 different group meetings about Thawra and about either the artist collective or the social entrepreneur collective or the the disabled community and how they were going to be affected, and children, and, you know, religious groups. Like, everybody was basically meeting in cafes and in homes, left, right, and center. And it was very, like, interesting to see, okay, but how are they organizing? Like, how there's thousands and thousands and thousands of groups that have just erupted right now that are working proactively, I think, to actually build the next step of Lebanon. I have never seen that before. I never thought I was going to see that. And you girls, like, yeah, you guys are like me, right? You're the same kind of diaspora generation Lebanese who have heard the same story of Lebanon be told for decades. So now you're actually part of a collective of people who are saying that's enough. And I've also noticed that of the funds that you've raised, you're not just allocating them to the biggest names or the safest, you know, options. You're vetting everybody so that they're safe, but you're also going for really small, niche, homegrown projects that are going to have a very tangible impact. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, like, how much have you raised so far? And maybe also tell us, like, some of the most exciting niche, like, groups that you're donating to.
So, so to answer your question, we've raised over £6.2 million right now. And very honestly, I remember the first day when we actually put this fundraiser online, and we set a very, very small kind of target. So
when I first saw it, it was like $30,000.
So there's actually a big debate on how much it was, because
it happened so fast. Like, I'm convinced we set it up at £10,000. Like, maybe it was for a couple of minutes, but I know that was the initial target. But then it was bumped to 50K, yeah. And then 100, and then we're like, oh, let's go big, 500K, and then 1 million, and then we're like, oh, like,
I remember, like, we were here, okay, shall we raise it? Shall we not raise it? When is the right time to raise it? And it was crazy, actually. We couldn't believe it when we saw, you know, the number is raising so quickly. Because we had done, you know, smaller fundraiser prior to this, but this one was just, it was incredible to see the entire mobilization that happened. And basically its popularity abroad as well, because it's not only the diaspora, right, that started donating. It was also it's been shared by so many international people, and yeah, we've been receiving as well a lot of messages, and it's really heartwarming to see that really the entire world is actually mobilized to help Lebanon right now. And so in terms of vetting process, yes, definitely our aim is not to give just to the big ones. We want to make sure, you know, that the money is spent responsibly, that the money, because at the end of the day, £6 million is a big responsibility. Mm-hmm. And we want to make sure that the money is going to the right hands, and that it is not just wasted. So the first few moments, in the first few days, we have decided to implement a vetting process. So we have a huge team that is currently working in collaboration with different organizations, including 3QA, to vet the entire, like, all the proposals that come through. So so usually in a crisis like that, the first few days are called, if I'm not mistaken, crisis period, mm-hmm. Critical or crisis period, and the problem during that period is that the needs are not really known. No one really knows how they're going to spend the money. We know that there's a need, but we don't know how much. And so that's why at first we have decided to cap the amount that we were giving to NGOs, because even their proposals were not clear exactly, and they were submitting proposals, but the numbers they were requesting were not that high, because them didn't know either how much they would be needing. So beside that, we are actually releasing today a strategy report where we will announce what are the main verticals that we are targeting. So we have done a study and have assessed what are the different areas that required our help. What were the areas that were underserved in terms of all the donations that are being given right now?
I think there's a big kind of focus on not duplicating efforts as well. Like that's the last thing we're going to need. That's why the need assessment, to your point, is very crucial and very critical to determine how to best take it from here.
Yeah. So our biggest focus is actually going to be on reconstruction, of course, because that is what needs it the most. The reconstruction needs billions of dollars, and it's actually really underserved in terms of donations. And the medical support as well, including mental health. And we want to make sure that everyone is actually included. We've always said that we don't want to discriminate, and it is the case for this fundraiser as well. So we want to make sure that minorities as well are going to be impacted by the fundraisers and not only like the big groups.
Like I don't think, well, none of us saw the crisis happening, right? We saw the revolution happening. You were started in the revolution. You were birthed from the revolution. But 9 months later to have, or more, maybe 11 months later, to have this explosion happening and this, seemingly reflective explosion in terms of your awareness and your value to the ecosystem. So you held a certain value symbolically and a value like in a logistical sense of bringing all these different entities together. Now you actually have a financial value also and a responsibility. And this kind of sets, you're almost now leading the way as a young millennial like group that has now this responsibility, that raised an insane amount of money, first time ever, from like a grassroots organization in like 24, 48, 72 hours. And like, you guys now have to show us how it's done. How does our generation's impact, and fundraisers, how do they go about? How do you vet? Like, the transparency that you guys are leading with is so amazing, and I think is so important. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of that transparency?
I think before we talk about it, and I think that's the most important thing, by the way, and that's something that we owe to people that are on the ground and that, we're subject to this explosion. I think, when the explosion happened, I think everyone's still in shock even. I think people are suffering from PTSD, and it's hard. It's hard to get back on your feet after seeing something so big, something no one is ever supposed to see in their lifetime. And, on top of it all, having no one help, like I'm talking about the government, being completely like just ignored by the government, not hearing from the government, just not knowing how you're going to get back on your feet and go back to life. So I think, it goes beyond the fundraising. It goes beyond Impact Lebanon. You see people running on the streets, running to help. You see people, organizations, on the ground trying to help as much as they can. And it's really by the people for the people. And I think, Lebanese, we do deserve that. Like the people that survived the blast, the people living in Marim Khayat, Karantina, Jemaise, they saw their whole lives, their whole childhood just gone like that. And we owe it to people like us that have a platform to use. I think we owe it to them and to every single person that was affected to mobilize ourselves and to do whatever we can. And a big part of it is that transparency, because with, it's an honor to be able to help, but like Sibylle said, it's a big responsibility. It's a huge sum. So people need to know how they're going to be impacted, where it's going. We've been kind of lied to or deceived by the government and by a lot of entities for so long that I think people are craving for that transparency and for clarity. So I think that's why I think Sibylle's team, the marketing team, is doing such a fantastic job at, creating live videos, answering frequently asked questions to answer all the questions that we're getting through direct messages or comments. And I think that's the standard that everyone should have, out of respect and out of duty for the people that survived this.
We owe it to not only to the people on the ground, but also to the donor, to all this international community that got mobilized and who trusted us with their money. At the end of the day, it's a big amount of trust that have placed between our hands. And we want to make sure that we don't disappoint and that we're able to honor that trust and to keep them updated on everything, like every step that we're taking.
Yeah.
So this is why it's super important for us to stay transparent. It's always been in our values. It's something that we've been fighting for, right, ourselves during the revolution. And not being transparent would be completely contrary to what we have been fighting for. Exactly.
It's hypocrisy at its best. And I think in London, when the revolution started, that same rage that you described, we all felt it. We couldn't go back to Lebanon because of work or whatever. And so seeing so many Lebanese on the streets, I didn't know there were so many, to be honest. And so we just started talking, with our flags and our tanajir and saying, just like, maybe we should be talking about things. And we found each other, in town halls, just talking and brainstorming. And I think that's the beauty of it, how organically it came together, with the same rage. We say that Impact is a baby of the revolution, and it's really what it is. And I think that's, and then we started structuring ourselves, and actually in this very room, we had a huge strategy session, a never-ending strategy session. But it's, I think that's how we got to, where we are today, and where we were able to raise so many, the funds that we were able to raise. Obviously, it wasn't the only factor, but it was a huge contributing one.
So I was not in Beirut. I was in Lebanon, in the mountains, and I did hear it. Actually, it's crazy because I was literally in the mountains 15 kilometers away, and still it felt like something happened next to us. The house shook, and obviously because we have all lived, 2006, we can recognize when there's an explosion. And yeah, we were super... We couldn't believe it when my dad called us and told us it was in Beirut. We just couldn't believe it. And she was in Beirut, actually.
Yeah, I was. Sorry, it's hard to talk about it for some reason.
It's hard for all of us to actually talk about it.
I was in Beirut. I was in my home in Ashafia, about a mile from the port, and we were actually, my family and I, my mom, my brother and I were looking at the window at the fire. We had a direct view, and we were just looking at it, and we're like, hopefully, the firefighters are going to come soon. And then, I had taken a break from work. I work really close to a window with music all the time in my earphones. So for some reason, I don't know why I wasn't doing that, thankfully. And we were just looking at the fire, and then we hear the first boom. And our eyes, it's like time stopped, and we're just looking at it. And then you see the big mushroom cloud, and then it gets a bit hazy. I know that my brother threw us to the ground. It took about 2 seconds before we heard the big boom, and the glass shattered all over. Everything shattered around us. Doors fell. Literally everything was just gone in a couple of seconds. And I was barefoot, and it's funny how people perceive shock or experience shock very differently. I was so determined to go grab a pair of slippers that were in the TV room, not even closed-toe shoes. I was so determined to go get this specific pair that was stuck under the TV that was broken. And I was digging through the glass to get it. It was your body responds in a very weird way. But then, something clicked, and immediately, I went and helped. My family and I, we own a pharmacy right down the building. So, a couple of minutes passed, we, breathed again. We were okay, this is a one-time thing. It doesn't seem to be, a series of explosives. So we need to act. And so we went to the pharmacy, we opened it up it was a first aid unit, we didn't do sutures, but people came with, I don't want to be graphic, but it wasn't pretty. And, you treat people, you reassure them, you tell them it's going to be okay, you try to reroute them to hospitals that are still accepting people. So it was hard, but I think you know, that ignites the rage inside of us. That ignites, you know, how did this happen? Like how, like I was in Sicine, like trying to do rounds to see if, and I saw someone fainting, and I had to make way for an ambulance. Like I had to do the traffic. Like I literally acted as a policeman, and it stays with you, but it also like ignites this fire in you. And so I think everyone, and I don't think that just people in Lebanon felt it. I think every Lebanese, wherever they were in the world, like felt this shock. I heard someone explain that it was like they have dreams like as if they were there. So there are different variances of shock and PTSD. And I think everyone's fueling all this energy into like acting for the revolution and against the corrupt. We were ready to we had communications on Slack, like ongoing. We had WhatsApp groups. The structure was there. We didn't have to implement it and then do the fundraiser. We were able to be very agile.
A lot of the processes of that fundraiser also came after that, thanks to all of these members, because we were able to set up new processes to account for the scale of that fundraiser, including the vetting team, including we've scaled a lot our marketing team as well, actually.
Were they all volunteers, or do you have full-time team members, or are you all volunteers?
We're all volunteers.
Yes, guys. Yes, transparency.
We all have full-time jobs, but I think it's like Impact Lebanon has a place in our hearts that, I mean, we can't just let it go.
What are the issues that you're facing in like managing it? Like you said, you have to increase the vetting team, you have to increase the marketing team, because now you're like, okay, we're doing so much so fast with so many people. We have to keep telling everybody what's going on as fast as possible, answering people's questions in 2 languages, maybe 3, you know? So what were some of the unexpected challenges that came with that?
So I think there's, as you said, a lot of challenges. So vetting team, for sure, that was a very big challenge. Like, who do we partner with? How do we go about this? Like the entire strategy as well. How do we allocate all of these funds? So marketing team, yes, it grew a lot, obviously. But I think one of the biggest challenge was, to set up processes in order to bring back the money to Lebanon without having a big haircut on it. So that was, in my opinion, a very big challenge, and we had a team that was dedicated to this, to talking to partners, talking to institutions in Lebanon, etc., to make sure that the money could actually get there without having, a 10% haircut.
People need to understand that we're not going to get what we want within weeks or months or maybe even years. It's going to take time. And I think what we've all learned is that it requires an awful lot of patience, which I'm not a patient person, but I'm learning. And, the finish line is actually freedom from our corrupt government. So I think if we just focus on that, focus on the good that we can do, and pace ourselves and know when to push and when to take a step back and breathe, I think that's how we do it while staying sane and having fresh minds. People were just talking about it all over the globe and actually educating themselves, which is amazing. But we need to keep that going. We need to keep having those conversations, keep raising awareness, because we need that. We need international awareness and involvement if we want to make a real impact. And I think it starts by, creating forums to have debates, to have conversations, really, some people just don't understand what's happening and they shouldn't be ashamed of it. It's very complicated. So just have open forums where people could learn more and contribute in whichever way they want.
And I think even on top of that, as I said, back then when we had several smaller initiatives, we realized that by joining forces we would actually have a bigger impact on Lebanon. And we've always worked on having a decentralized structure, within Impact Lebanon, to make sure that everyone can actually come with an idea and bring that idea to life.
Oh, I'm super proud of what you guys did. I couldn't be prouder to have an amazing grassroots volunteer-led initiative like this that's bringing together so many people, that's created real impact, that understood how the internet worked, and that won the game to be able to make people talk about Lebanon and donate to Lebanon. That is so important.
Yeah, and Impact Lebanon really has an army behind it. And we're thankful to each and every person. Yeah, we don't want to take all the credit. Yeah, and we really would not be here if it wasn't for every single person.
Yeah, absolutely. When I say you, I also mean you as like the whole Impact Lebanon team. All 19 co-founders, legendary co-founders across ages and socioeconomic levels and geographies.
And 150 plus active members.
And that's wild. That is like a crazy level of organization that you guys need to do that. And if anything, hopefully this becomes, you know, a bit of a model on how other groups can work together and really rebuild the country that we're fighting for right now. So I want to thank you so much, boss ladies, for joining me on this call and making the time.
Thank you
for having us.
It was great chatting with you and talking about it. And let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah. Talk about Lebanon, guys.
Talk about Lebanon.